Hey everyone, the sun is shining today. That makes us all happy in North Texas, right? In the month of February, we have been talking about self-love. Everybody's talking about romantic love, but we're talking about self-love. And last week we kind of defined it. We tried to define it because it's sometimes hard to grasp. And we talked about it being a state of appreciation for ourselves, a state of appreciation for ourselves that actually produces some action towards supporting our physical, mental, spiritual growth. So, a state of appreciation that shows up in the way we take care of ourselves. Self-love means that we have a high regard for our own well-being. It also means that we're taking care of our own needs and not sacrificing our own well-being in order to please someone. Now, I realize there's a place for sacrifice, but we're not doing it in order to please someone. So today I want us to talk about, we mentioned some things about self-care last week, and certainly self-care is a part of self-love. But I want us to think about self-love today as a process, as a journey. What does it look like if we see it as a process instead of a checklist, a list of items to do? What if you really understand self-love as a process? Well, the thing that comes from that is that we are able to accept imperfection, right? So imperfection is not a sign of weakness. If we begin to see self-love as a journey, we go, okay, imperfection is not a sign of weakness. It's really just an indicator that I'm human, and human is good, right? We don't want to be a robot. We don't want to be a monster. We want to be human. So I can begin to accept imperfection as part of the journey. Self-love as a process, as a journey, also helps me begin to appreciate, accept, love the mess. We can do messy and great all at the same time. I got a text a few days ago from a friend that basically she was checking in by saying, I'm a mess and great all at the same time. And we can begin to see that. It didn't work out quite like we expected it to, but we don't have to make that messy place a place where I feel unworthy. We can make it a place of awakening, a place of truth, a place of discovery. And we can be okay with the mess and be great all at the same time. So if we see self-love as a process, then we begin to understand that we're always going to have room for improvement. I mean, it's always going to be a journey, right? We're never going to arrive. So self-love is a process, and we keep moving toward more. And so if we begin to see it this way, if we begin to understand, okay, it's not a checklist, although there's a place for that. It's not a bunch of items that I'm doing, but it is this journey that I'm on. Then self-love, we can also acknowledge that there is, that the world has certain standards. We can acknowledge those standards while we create new guidelines, rules, standards for ourselves. Because standards, guidelines, rules are fixed, right? They're stagnant, for lack of a better word, but we are growing, moving, changing, adapting. And so sometimes those guidelines, rules, standards have to adapt with us. So if we understand that the self-love is a process, then we don't get hung on some of the old rules or old standards. And then if we get that this whole idea of self-love is about being in process, about being on a journey, we can do some do-overs. I have a friend whose family is so good at doing do-overs. They get a do-over. If someone responds to something in a way that isn't really aligned with who they mean to be, then they get a do-over. And if we understand that we're in process, then it's easier. In fact, starting over is actually kind of exciting and not a doomsday, not a daunting task. It's something that we get to do. So seeing self-love as this idea of a process, there's a lot of strength in that. We gain a lot from that. We can accept imperfection. We can love our mess. We can understand that there's always room for growth, room for improvement. We can acknowledge that the world does have a standard, but we get to create our own standards, and we can make room to do over, start anew. So I'm encouraging you this week to see self-love as a process and begin to jot some of these things down and begin to work them into your world. What would it look like for you to begin to see this as a journey? I'm Michele Gooch with Life by Design. I know that you want to live a life of purpose, of fulfillment, of satisfaction. And I also know that to do that, you have to really know yourself. And so much of the time we lose track of who we are. And we lose track of, we start second guessing ourselves. We start doubting ourselves. And I just don't believe any of us need to live in a world where we're constantly doubting ourselves. And I get that. I know how paralyzing that can be. And so I've had the privilege of creating a framework that moves us from the place we're in to the place we really want to be. And so if you're interested in that, if you want to work toward that, find me at lifebydesign.guru, www.lifebydesign.guru. I'll see you next Wednesday at 1.